Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy early start to tonight's macro Sunday morning over here as we get prepared to look at the long-term picture for Bitcoin, kind of check in on the overall standing of kind of where we are in the, in the grand scheme of things, and then put the puzzle piece together for hopefully a rather eventful June. Anyways, other than that, I do want to actually let you know that we're going to be having a sale starting tomorrow, Monday, as it is Memorial Day weekend, or Memorial Day, I think. And so we'll be running a sale for a full week there. Just want to let you know in advance because you can save yourself a few bucks if you just are patient enough to wait another almost 24 hours. Anyways, other than that, I would like to just jump right into this content. So we're going to start it off right in over here with the long-term chart. This is a weekly on Bitcoin, of course, and we're going to be looking at the timing of the halving and several other new things actually. So in this case, I'm going to first put on my drawing tools. You can see a few things. Well, you see a lot of things right here, but the things that I really want to be focusing on to start this one off is not something new, but we'll get into it, but it'll build on the new things that'll come right after it. So in this case, yes, anytime that we have seen Bitcoin go for these parabolic runs, it has put in these long-term downtrends. And once it breaks that long-term downtrend on the weekly, that is essentially where the long-term rally has kind of based off and began from. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin just immediately zooms to new all-time highs. No, of course, you can see this over here. But generally speaking, pullbacks were major opportunities, and that first move to the upside, was pretty consistent amongst all of the major cycles. Anyways, what I've also done here is that when we look at the halving, we can notice that about a year before the halving itself, that's when that breakout does typically occur. You can see on this first one over here, about 52 bars on a weekly, which is one year. You can see on this one over here, 54 bars, so 2 more weeks in this case. In this case over here, 58 bars. So you're now starting to probably notice a bit of a relationship growing by another 4 right there, or sorry, 2. And then 4, yes. And then moving over here to the most recent one, we did see it break out from that long-term downtrend 66 bars before the presumed halving date. Because again, it's a bit of an estimation, but basically keeping within alignment that same sort of relationship. Again, you have 52, 54, 58, 66. So 2, 4, 8. Interesting. There does seem to be a bit of a relationship right there. Anyways, with that said, we can go ahead and look at these ones in a more granular sense. And you'll notice that on pretty much not pretty much, but all of these prior ones, keeping in mind there's only 3, so it's not like a hell of a lot of sample here, but they did go for a nice run after initially breaking that long-term downtrend, followed by a pretty, sharp correction. So you can see that one right there. You can see this one over here, nice run, boom, correction. Doesn't look like much here, but it is like a 30 to 5% correction, I believe. This one a lot more obvious, closer to 50%. But after that first initial run of over 200%, pretty damn impressive, right? Anyways, in this case, we have seen a decent run thus far from the breaking of this. But to put into context, it's been about a 40% move to the upside. Compare that with the last one where we did see an over 200% move, and then this one over here where we did see how big was this one? About 100% move, and this one over here, which we did see actually over 100% move as well. It's kind of out of context of those other ones. So I am still inclined to say that this one does seem to be a bit of an outlier, meaning that I do think that it's still more likely to continue here before having a sharper correction. Now, here's the thing. The timing that also occurs from the breaking of this region to that next major high, we can also document as well, alongside the actual percentage gain. And I'll just bring you over here to the spreadsheet, and we can see that, over the past 3 iterations, which it's not much, but it's best we can do. We can see that the average gain was about 140%, or a little bit over that, to be fair. And it did take about 100 days on average for that next major high to be met. Now, I would focus solely on the most recent 2 iterations here because they're a lot closer together with each other at 133 days versus 126 days. The first iteration was only 42, so you could say that maybe that's an outlier. Again, we don't really have enough sample to really be speaking so much in depth with it, but it's best what we can do for right now. And just to kind of see where we're at, you can understand that one, the percentage gain thus far, about 40%, is certainly on the lower end. We haven't seen anything below 100% just yet. And then 2, the time taken from the breakout You know, the average technically is 100, but we do see, you know, a couple of those readings come in, you know, decently above 100, more around like 130, let's say. And in this case, we have seen nearly 100 days transpire. In fact, after today, it will be day number 98 from the breaking of that long-term downtrend. So, you know, is Bitcoin getting ready for another move here, maybe in the next month? Is there another 30 days of this perhaps? Well, I would say on the upper end, perhaps yes, you know, just based off of that data right there. Anyways, that's going to play hand in hand, or hopefully hand in hand with the next few things that we're going to be going over. So in this case, I will now reference this inverted fib that you see on these charts. The inverted fib is anchored from the closing highest price on the weekly for that cycle with the lowest closing price for that cycle. And what I noticed here is that on every cycle, after breaking that long-term downtrend, Bitcoin goes for a nice run and then typically bases off somewhere around this 382 fib, as you can see right here. This is the first cycle, by the way, in 2011. We can see the second cycle over here. Again, boom, big run, bases around that 382, as you can see. Boom, big run again, bases around that 382. You know, this one was, of course, a bit of a black swan with the old Rona dump, but, you know, even then still did get reasonably close to it, I'd say. And as you can see over here, if we draw an inverted fib from the closing high price to the closing low price of this current cycle, you can see that the 382 is actually coming in pretty much where Bitcoin is basing off of right now. Again, understand that it's not like, you know, to the fucking decimal, but around there is a good gauge. And that would be 26,700, which Bitcoin's basically spent the last 3 weeks kind of chopping around, you know, maybe a few closures here and there right below, but on a weekly closing basis, actually, it still is, yeah, it's actually maintained above there, to be fair. Anyways, my point is that we do kind of expect, you know, this area to essentially hold if we're going to be going off of the past behaviors over here as well, or at least somewhere around here. You know, that could even come with still a move down to 25,000 bucks. But the way that Bitcoin's active right now, I think it really had that chance to do it this past week. You know, as it kind of just chops around, being very, very frustrating. But you know, it is what it is, man. That's trading at the end of the day. And well, you got to take the good with the bad, I suppose. Even though I will be the first one to admit that, yeah, last week was quite frustrating, honestly. I didn't really have much opportunities myself. Anyways, yeah, so looking at this one right here, the 382, you know, essentially suggesting that our current area would be a good, you know, a good area, you know, for Bitcoin to kind of base off of. Anyways, taking that one step further, you'll also notice that there's a couple of moving averages on this chart. Now, I really want to focus on the light blue one. That's the 9 exponential moving average. I mean, we should also reference the green 55 as well. But what I want to talk about here is that anytime that Bitcoin has, again, broken that long-term downtrend and then reclaimed the light blue moving average, it is essentially, you know, governed that run on a weekly closing basis, usually until the end. Again, doesn't need to be exactly on par with it, but you know, 1 closure below, not a problem. 2 closures below, yeah, that's usually the end. But you can see that it generally governs it. Starting off with this first one over here, you know, again, reclaims it over here, boom, all the way up. Yeah, there's a few closures below, that's okay, but it never really never really deviates super far from it. Same thing over here, boom, all the way up, and then again over here, all the way up again. And what do you know? Bitcoin reclaimed this one after it crossed the 55 in the last few weeks, basically. And you can see, again, kind of chopping around this current region. So what does that essentially suggest? It essentially suggests that, hey, if Bitcoin can start to close above that region, it's probably pressure back onto the upside once again. As it does kind of level off here. And it should also be known that or I should have put that in conjunction with crossing the 55. I don't know if I necessarily articulated it in that way, but, well, hopefully now I did. Anyways, you get the point. You know, this is kind of like a sticky area, if you will. And you know, it's looking more and more like the Bitcoin Bulas are probably going to take over from here. Again, I do kind of think that the Bitcoin bears, they had the ball in their court this past week. They didn't really they didn't really do anything with it. And now you have a couple of narratives coming up too, right? So you got the debt ceiling crisis, which, you know, is there a possibility that the US defaults? Yeah. How big is that probability? Probably pretty fucking small. So you probably have that news piece hanging overhead that, hey, you know, it's saved. We're all saved. You know, it's solved, and they made an agreement. It's like, yeah, probably already baked in. But my point is that, you have that headline coming into the market relatively soon. So, or very, very likely relatively soon, within this next week. So probably going to be a nice impetus for, a narrative play to the upside. And then what else? Well, then you have, I guess, more timing sort of things, which we can get into now. Looking over here at the MVRV indicator, this is the, of course, market value or market cap versus realized cap value. And what you need to know about this is just, it's just a continuation of the analysis from prior, in the sense that anytime that we do see this one get into the green zone and then leave that green zone, you typically have like a first kind of little correction, but these are opportunities, historically speaking. So I've marked off all of these areas with the green vertical bars. Again, I know that I do like to repeat this stuff on a Sunday, but it's important to, at least for myself, to remind myself where we're at in the greater scheme of things. And as you can see, all of these times after that behavior was had, pullbacks were opportunities, namely pullbacks to that 9 exponential on the weekly, by the way, which we just referenced earlier. But same thing over here, as these two moving averages kind of cross in a more bullish fashion with the lower period above the higher period, we do see that this signature happens over here on the MVRV. Same thing over here, obviously. And, kind of propelling that run. And then more recently, in our current trajectory here, as we do see, well, MVRV, dipped its toesy boesies into the green zone, left it right here. We see the cross happen right here. Would be suggesting that pullbacks somewhere down around the 9 are probably going to be opportunities long term. Now, this is, again, long term. I'm not speaking about intra-week stuff. We're on a weekly time frame, for God's sake. But my point is that, generally speaking, sideways and up, as Bitcoin kind of works its way through this transitionary period. Now, I did forget to mention one big thing with the halving thing over here. I kind of alluded to it, but I do feel like it would be wise to go back to it. After that initial major run, about a year prior to the halving, typically there is a pretty sharp correction afterwards, which we can see over here, on average about a 40% move to the downside. So, at some point, I would be looking for a much greater pullback, but I'm starting to believe that it doesn't really happen from here, from this $31,000 high. Could be happening from much higher. It's hard to kind of forecast in advance, but even just playing around with numbers, let's say that, that level, that pullback, that correction happens somewhere from like $39,000. Well, 40% down puts you where? Puts you like kind of where we're at right now, in the mid 20s. Yes. Okay. So we've got that. Moving on into the monthly over here for the accumulation and distribution indicator. Of course, the monthly is going to be closing in, let me just double check, in 3 days. Thursday is the 1st of June. And, well, I'll just kind of briefly explain this indicator. Anytime we do see this indicator, the accumulation distribution indicator, turn red or green, and get a positive or negative slope in the extreme red or green zones, I should say, that has correlated with macro shifts in direction. So I've plotted the ones here where you see a slope change from down to up in the red zone, and these have essentially marked off a couple of very important things. One, that the low was already in for that, for that particular cycle, and that two, again, pullbacks down into the 9 exponential, especially on the monthly, were opportunities. This one over here, there's your slope change, grabs onto the 9, boom, all the way up. Here's your slope change, grabs onto the 9, boom, 200% move. Here's your slope change, grabs onto the 9. There's like a fucking 20x maybe, something like that. Same thing over here as well, gets that slope change back above the 9, runs it all the way up to the highs of 2013, 2014. So, looking at all these different things, it does make me really start to believe that, maybe we did just see that correction short term, because where did Bitcoin just base off of? The 9. It just based off of the fucking 9. And the slope of the accumulation distribution indicator is continuing to be positive here. In fact, it's even increasing the severity of its curvature to the upside. So it does suggest that, this is being accumulated, which, again, another signal long term that, the lows very, 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 very likely in, and pullbacks likely to be picked up and march on higher. Anyways, yes, okay, so we've gone through all of that boring stuff. Let's get into another boring thing over here. Just kidding. But the 6-month time frame, just again, want to reiterate on a macro Sunday video that we do see hidden bullish divergence. Again, this is not going to be confirmed at the end of this month, but it will be at the end of next month. So assuming that Bitcoin closes anywhere above the last 6-month high, which is 25,207 on the index, that's going to be confirmed. And on the lower end, it would imply like a $35,000 to $36,000 target. On the upper end, it would imply about, this is like way on the upper end, but $45,000. Fair enough. Not bad at all right there. Anyways, moving on from there, I do want to reference that the monthly Joule is doing something that it hasn't done in almost 2 years now, basically since July of 2021. And that is, not only have we seen the oscillator itself turn white, then turn the cyan color supported by the DMI, but you're getting that third piece of verification here where it's actually crawling above the slower moving oscillator. That's that pink or magenta color in the background. And we haven't seen it in this, in a similar posturing since, you could even say like June 2020. This current trajectory over here, a little bit more similar to, like June of 2019. But ultimately, these were, again, long-term bases before launching much, much higher. So I do look at this as a long-term good thing for the BULAs there. And, just kind of playing into the overall analysis, I suppose. Moving on from there, seen as monthly will be closing relatively soon. We don't have a bi-monthly or quarterly or 4-month, by the way, closing. So really all that we have to look at is the monthly. But the monthly stochastic oscillator, again, it's remained positioned to the upside as long as Bitcoin is going to be closing above 16,100, which it's looking quite likely. $11,000 move. We've seen crazier things than that over the course of 3 to 4 days, but I'm gonna take the other side of that bet, and I'm gonna say probably not gonna happen in this case. And again, this is just a long-term continuation of this analysis where we saw several things. We saw the monthly stochastic turn to the upside alongside hidden bullish divergence on these, higher lows on price action with lower lows on the oscillator right here. And now we're seeing another thing happen that is significant, which is Bitcoin. The stochastic will very likely close above that moving average, of which, when we've seen that in the past, that represents the second of these consecutive green vertical bars. And you can see that Bitcoin really started to go into a bit more of a sideways consolidation and then launched higher over the course of the next half year to a year. So, are we going to see the same thing over here? Perhaps yes. Anyways, moving on now, I did want to go back to this chart. We'll actually go to the weekly and we'll reference the Gaussian channel here, as we can see that the Gaussian channel, well, it didn't necessarily get exactly tested on that last move to the downside, which is why I did think that Bitcoin had a little bit lower to go, somewhere into the lower $25,000 territory. We can look at this, or at least I would be looking at this as, as essentially, providing the same sort of action as a test to that mean band. And again, as long as Bitcoin's above it, it's more likely to play within this section right here rather than, have one of these more deep corrections, maybe all the way down to $21,000. So, that 25,200-ish region, the way that I look at this right here, it's like, yeah, it had its chance this week to really do it. Didn't really take it. Didn't even get that far down into the low 25s. In fact, the low of this week, 25,873 on the index. That's another good indication that probably does try somewhere back around the top side of the Gaussian channel before anything else. And then, of course, if and when we do see a breakout above the top side of the Gaussian channel, well, those have all led on to and catalyzed some pretty impressive rallies. So, will that be the next big impetus? That is currently coming in around 29,730 basically. So essentially, if you see Bitcoin back above $30,000, we're probably looking at another parabolic push on this current rally, and then the major correction. So again, I want to be very, 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 very clear. Like, there's extremely likely going to be a sharp correction, 30 to 40%. The question is, is Bitcoin doing it right now from, $30,000, or did we get another push on this one? And the things that I'm looking at are starting to suggest that it probably does get another push. That'll be fully confirmed on from this particular look back above about $30,000 on a weekly closing basis. At that point, probably going to be pushing into the deep $30,000 territory. Maybe even a Fiboswani target gets hit at that point. But I actually haven't spoken with him the past week, so maybe I should ask him if his stuff is still on track there. But I believe one of his invalidations was hit, although I need to check with the man himself. Anyways, yes, okay, so we've got that. I think I'll also reference this as well. I just think that this was fucking funny. It was also super fucking funny as well, because the falling pizza here on Bitcoin did get a lot of love on Twitter, which is hilarious. It is, at least in my opinion, hilarious, because this is probably the least important, least like thing that I care about at all, maybe even not at all. But a falling pizza right here, falling wedge pattern. But that certainly got some of the most engagement on Twitter, even though, in my opinion, the more sophisticated forms of analysis, which hold a lot more weight, are probably a lot more valuable. What do people typically gravitate towards? This. So fair enough, man. You can't hate people for that. But it is what it is. Anyways, falling pizza, would be resolved with a closure basically back of about a little bit less than $28,000 at that point. Very likely looking at a move at least to $30,000, maybe even back around this prior high here, which was 31. And of course, if that were to happen, then that would catalyze the weekly Gaussian channel, so on and so forth. Everything else would suggest that, hey, Bitcoin probably going to go for another, pretty impressive push there. So that's kind of what I'd be aware of in that particular venue. Anyways, yeah, so we've gotten pretty deep into this video now. It's already 20 more minutes in. I was going to go over the 4-hour HPDR ranges. Should we do it still? It's going to go over the 2-day time frame as well, which we'll save that one for tomorrow. It's been frustrating enough anyways, so perhaps for the best. Rainbow indicator over here for, is it Pride Month still? Probably not. I don't know. But it's still blue. It's still blue, man. And then, of course, yeah, if we go and reference the 4-hour HPDR ranges, we can see short-term 27,550 top side of the current range versus 26,150, the bottom side of the current range, with the median or average coming in right around about 26.9, meaning that short term, if Bitcoin starts to lose 26.9 again, I would be, I would be a bit more fearful of a retest of these lows, and if things are going to break, probably would happen from there. And by the same token, back above about 27, let's just call it 27,550, even on a 4-hour closing basis, we're probably going to see a move north of $28,000, and that's going to set into motion, all the other things that we spoke about. And for what it's worth right now, HPDRO, the DRO indicator, it's actually not really giving us too much, in fact. So I'll hold off on that topic, and I'll save the more fun stuff for tomorrow's analysis. Anyways, that's it for today. I want to be wishing you the best bets. Again, just a humble reminder that tomorrow a sale does start. So please hold off, or I would strongly suggest holding off on buying something. I mean, you can if you want, obviously, right now. But if you're interested in any one of the programs or products, just hold off for like another day or so, and it'll be, and you'll save yourself a few bucks. What else? Yeah, Bybit, Shill, blah, 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 blah. You already know that. Please do consider, however, liking and hitting the bell for this for this video, as it will massively help out. And I think on that note, I'll be signing off. Want to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Monday.